So in this video we're going to look at more detail at the prop and lintel roof system used to support the roofs of ancient Greek temples. The big issue we have here is that this system, although effective, put a limit on how wide you could have the walls of the cellar. So it put a limit on the size of this interior space. So this is the cellar, this is the inner room of a Greek temple that held the cult statue. And if I go and show you again what I'm talking about, here's our Greek temple. So we're talking about this space right in here that housed the temple. Housed the cult statue. So how does a prop and lintel system work? Well, you have this very, very heavy clay brick roof tile, and that roof system is putting a lot of weight down on these wooden beams. And that weight is being transferred down onto the columns here and onto the cellar walls here and here and here. And that weight is also being pushed down on the beam here. Remember that when you apply a load to a beam, it's going to bend and it's going to be in compression at the top and tension at the bottom. And wood can handle that as long as the wood is thick enough. So one of the challenges the Greeks had was finding trees that were large enough to give you the dimension that could withstand that weight. But there was a limit on how wide, because this is the largest span. It's from the middle of the wall here to here. And so there is a limit to how wide a beam you could get and the amount of weight or load that that beam could support. So let's have a look at a little bit more detail at some of the systems. So let's take off the tile. You can see underneath the tile we have these beams here, the rafters. They would have been directly under the tile. So let's take those off. Some of them don't really want to come off very well. Then you can see you have these main beams or purlins. The one down the middle is called the ridge beam, and here you can see on this model where those long purlins would have been. And so any force or load pushing down on these purlins or these beams here was transported down by a prop or a post directly onto the lintel here. So there are the props for the ridge beam, and here you can see I've just attached them like that. And so let's take these off, and so now you can see that you've got these lintels that span the space. And so the problem is that if you put a load here, most of the force is being transferred straight down into the stone. And so remember, stone is very, very strong in compression, so it can handle the weight. But if you've got a large span here, there's a limit to how much load this wood can handle. So the problem was that if you attempted to make your cellar wall even wider, then these lintels would break. So what was the solution to that? Well, you could do what some architects did, which was you could add another row of columns sort of in the middle here. So here's an example of some temples in Petraeum in Italy, and you can see that in the top temple they put a row of columns down the middle to make the cellar wider. In the bottom one they put a double row of internal columns to make the temple much larger. So, but the issue still is there, that there still is a maximum distance that you can span using the prop and lintel system. Now, at some point, and we don't know when this happened, a new type of wooden framing system came in, which is the wooden truss. There are some temples, Greek temples in Sicily, that have extremely wide cellars, and it's thought that maybe they didn't use the prop and lintel system, but instead they used this system here, which I'll put in here, which is a truss. It's not actually sitting on there, but I'll tell you what, I'll even take these internal walls out to show you this. So a truss is a roofing system that was used a lot by the Romans. We don't know who invented it. We don't know whether the Greeks picked it up off the Carthaginians or whether the Romans themselves invented it. But the truss, when the truss came in, it totally transformed architecture because it allowed you to span a massive internal space. You didn't need walls or columns in this area here. The truss was very, very robust. And so this is sort of a truss. I'll take it apart for you. And it has some different components. And one of the things that you are going to need to understand is how does a truss work in terms of compression and tension. So let's just put this back together again. It's a little tight. But this new system of roofing completely transformed architecture. And it led to a new type of building, which was called the basilica during the Roman period, and then that led to Christian churches and cathedrals. And today the truss is still used in most roofing systems, although most of the time it's no longer built out of wood, it's built out of steel. So hopefully this video gives you a sense of how wood was used in both the prop and lintel system and then later in the truss system to span large spaces, and the limitations on the prop and lintel system when it came to architectural design.